Good evening, folks. This is Deb and Dave, and this is your Factivist Report for Monday, the 9th of October, John Lennon's birthday. Happy birthday, John Lennon. We're going to talk tonight about several things, one of them being the Heritage Foundation. And over the next few weeks, we're going to move into a discussion of Project 2025. Today's show will just be basically laying the groundwork for all the stuff that's going to come after this. I did do a show on this. It was about 48 minutes long, where I touched on a lot of topics, but this one's going to be much more in depth. So I'm going to turn this over to Dave.
So the first thing I want to do just a tiny bit. I know Deb's, pardon me, Deb's done a lot in terms of the history of the Heritage Foundation and all of that. I'm not really going to touch on that much on that, other than to say that the Heritage Foundation was founded in the 1970s, and they really gained ground by writing a blueprint for Ronald Reagan in 1980.
And that's where our troubles begin.
Right, which Ronald Reagan ran with it, and gave the Heritage Foundation some of their, most, if not all of their street cred. And from there, they just grew and grew and grew. The Heritage Foundation.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
No. Donald Trump's first term, he gave the Heritage Foundation almost 70% of what they wanted in 4 years. So,
right.
That's why we're doing this.
And the Heritage Foundation consistently talks about Trump being their man. Okay. So understand that Ronald Reagan would be a rhino to them at this point, because he's not nutty enough. Right. The Heritage Foundation is basically a think tank. A bunch of guys sitting around and talking about what policy should be.
Yep. Drinking whiskey.
Yep. So they came up with this thing called the Project 2025, which, yes, they would want Trump in, but this is a plan for any right-winger at this point. This is the blueprint that the Heritage Foundation has put out there. They basically put out a plan every year, but this is where they're going. The first thing I want to talk about is this idea of fiscally conservative people spending conservatively and fiscally liberal people overspending. It's in the language. So it was low-hanging fruit for the Republicans to begin with. And it's a lie. Okay, which we will go into. First, before I do that, I want to make sure the screen share is on.
I mean, come on. How can you not know it's a lie when we're talking about conservative spending and we're talking about building a fucking wall that doesn't work that's costing $11 billion?
Right. Well, now that's $11 billion for the whole thing.
Right.
We talked about this in the short show. For each mile, this wall is going to cost about $20 million. The budget that was put forward, where money has to be spent by 2023 on this 20-mile stretch of land in Texas, which now you have guys kind of on the line, like guys like Henry Quaylaw. He's skewering it. Great. Continue to skewer it, because he's considered one of those guys who could actually go Republican. When we have a majority in Congress, we're going to need you, Henry Quaylaw, to back up what you said. This is the process of a budget. And this is where it gets really, really complicated. Each line item, each budget item has specifications. When the money's going to be spent, how much is allocated, whether or not that money can be moved, and in what way, and deadlines for the spending of it. Each year. And each year you have to look at what has already been spent and what has already been allocated. And if you want to move and if you want to amend the spending from prior budgets, it gets crazy. This is basically the process. Each federal agency requests money and they justify why they need it and all of that. They send it to the OMB. The OMB refers requests and sends their proposals to the president. President sends the budget proposal to Congress. Again, Congress. Joe Biden is not a king. Neither was Donald Trump, even though he thought he was. The budget.
He intends to be, but that's, neither here nor there.
The budget depends on Congress. Listen to me again. The budget depends on Congress. That is why it was devastating when we had a trifecta with Trump. He had the Senate majority at one point and the House majority at some point, which is when he hammered all of these long-term budget things, and including one bill, which we will go into detail over. Proposed funding divided into 12 subcommittees, which hold hearings, etc., etc. The House and Senate create their own budget resolutions, which must be negotiated and merged. The budget is Congress dependent.
And then once it's merged, it has to be voted on by both houses.
Congress sends the approved funding bills to the president to sign or veto. So, with this $400 billion spending, Biden could make a big deal out of it. What would happen? The government would shut down.
Right.
He's trying to avoid a government shutdown.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. That's not a viable solution to a 20-mile stretch of wall. You want this all to stop, vote. That's all I'm going to say.
And I understand. Listen, I'm with you. I don't want it either.
I don't either.
Okay. The ocelots and the we're talking about the fact that it's not going to work. It's a giant waste of money. It's a giant waste of allocation of resources. Okay, we're with you. Get the Congress that you want to change this.
We're with you, and so is Joe Biden. But the fact of the matter is, he can only do what he can do and no more. He's not a dictator, okay? He's not able to just do as he pleases because he's got the title of president next to his name.
Now, Deb did mention this. There is some language in some of the articles that we read over and over again that Biden reversed his position on the border wall. He didn't.
That's mainstream media bullshit. That's mainstream media softballing the headline or looking for some kind of reaction from the reading public. Okay? I only saw one headline that was accurate. Okay? Joe Biden has to build a border wall. Congress refused to change the money. It was something to that effect. And I think it might have been an AP, actually.
It was an AP. The two sources that I have for that is AP.
The New
All
York
right.
Times, by the way, our friends at the New York Times were the ones who said it was a reversal.
Right.
And they
Now,
finished it.
also AOC stated that Biden should reverse his position on this. I believe that is her setting the tone so that when he does have the votes for it, he will reverse it.
Yep.
The budget is a living document. And the more you want, the more you need to get Democrats in. And then if you think that they are being too whatever, moderate or corporate or whatever, then you push. But let's get there first.
Correct.
So here is what we're talking about, the Heritage Foundation. It's an advertising agency basically for the GOP. And right now, the right wing, Donald Trump, and anyone who wants to run. Also, it was founded in part by one of the Coors beer magnates, just so you know. So part of it is Trump's vision, but the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 is not just parroting what Trump said. It is based in decades of rhetoric and study, or whatever you want to say it is. It's decades of rhetoric.
If you looked at Agenda 47, which we talked about last week,
yeah,
and you went and then looked at Project 2025, you'd see an awful lot of similarities.
Yes.
It's almost like Trump with his own little Agenda 47 made the fucking Heritage Foundation even more toxic than it already was.
Now, this is a New York Times article, and it's one of the better ones. This is by Nick Cohen for just this year, a couple of months ago, August 10th, talking about the GOP not being Reagan's party anymore. Reagan would be considered at this point a rhino.
They've called him that. They've called him that on Twitter. I've seen it many times.
Yep. And they're more interested in Trump and his rhetoric and all of that. And if you see it, some of the anti gay bigotry will be in the rhetoric in the Heritage Foundation, more so than in previous years as well.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Now this goes into, and we'll get into this in a minute. Understand, this is a huge chunk of money, and we'll get into it in a minute. But this goes into the heart of the Heritage Foundation's argument.
Right.
That the Democrats are spending money, going out of style, and Trump, is that fiscally conservative person.
And I really don't want to hear that. Okay. I
right.
really don't, because this is bullshit. All right. That's absolute bullshit.
So this is how that debt was, or that increase, that $4 trillion that he spent, was allocated. We're going to talk extensively about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which in itself $1.8 trillion. A lot of that is tax cuts for business expenses, that kind of stuff, in addition. And on top of that, the GOP House is looking to extend that and spend more money.
Actually, to be truthful, they want to make these tax cuts permanent.
Yes, they do. So ACA
to the wealthy.
Yeah. the ACA tax repeals, $500 billion, and the BBA, that's basically the budget.
Yeah.
The bipartisan budget agreement, I think, is what they call, and that's every year that they call that.
Yeah.
So we're going to get back to this. This is just part of the Heritage Foundation's plan, the Mandate for Leadership, Project 2025.
Pages. Okay.
Yeah, almost 900 pages of this crap.
The blueprint for fascism. That's what it is.
So there is a preface by the current president. Here we go with the 2025 advisory board. There we go. Here we go. Oh, no, that's something else. There's a lot of words here. This is just lists of all the authors.
Did I just say Peter Navarro's name there?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Traitor, by the way, just so you know.
More contributors. Here we go. So this is A Promise to America by Kevin Roberts. I do have a bio of this guy in here so you know who he is. He's a longtime conservative advocate and a policy wonk, basically, you would say, or, you know, another talking head. So he talks a lot about the conservative promise and the restoration of fiscal sanity. Just saying. He does also talk about the socialist spending that sent us into a spiral from the 1970s. Now, what he's talking about with that is social programs for LGBTQ, for the Grey Panthers, for minorities, and for women's rights, and for women's equality. Because the women's movement really started ramping up in the 1970s. But we're going to be talking about the 4 pillars of their plan. And you see this throughout their little bit. They talk a lot about a lot of things, obviously, because this thing is almost 1,000 pages. But here are the 4 things. Number 1, restore the family as a centerpiece of American life and protect our children, which is absolute horse crap, because at every turn, the Republicans take money and food out of kids' mouths through the SNAP program, kid lunches, all that kind of stuff, and we'll go through it. Number 2, dismantle the administrative state and return, Deb loves this word, self-governance to the American people. It's not going to work. We tried. We tried for like a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about we can't get people out to a fucking voting booth, and we're going to have people self-govern. You know, I'm sorry, folks, but please don't make me laugh too hard. I'm old and I might pee my own pants. But anyway, go ahead.
Number 3, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. Hold on. Donald Trump is a global threat, as is Steve Bannon, you know, traipsing around the world trying to get support from fascists.
Yeah.
Watch the break.
How do you think Giorgia Meloni got herself elected in Italy? Okay. Right. Yeah. Come on, people. Jesus.
Secure our God.
Honestly, no. Yeah. Somebody said today, and I agree, Donald Trump told some kind of a gigantic, ginormous lie, and somebody actually posted underneath it, it doesn't surprise me how he comes up with this stuff. What surprises me is how people buy into it. And that's exactly it. I just don't understand. Is everybody in America brain dead right now? I'd like to know.
Wasn't that Ron Filipkowski? I think it was.
Might have been.
Yeah.
No, it was his post. It was a comment on his post. It was a person on the Twitter.
Right. Ron Filipkowski, by the way, is a producer of the Midas Touch, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty. Now, what they mean is freedom not to get vaccinated and freedom to carry a gun in the supermarket.
Right.
Not freedom to
be gay or be transgender or any of that. You can't be who you are. You can only be what they want you to be.
Or freedom to help your 10-year-old raped daughter to get an abortion.
Right.
I know that's an extreme example, but this is where we're going.
It's a real thing that actually does happen. It has happened several times in the United States since they overturned Roe v. Wade. It's just that the newspapers don't report that.
There's one thing that I wanted to mention because I'm going to go into it. They talk about all sorts of stuff, international policy, you see with the Soviet Union, blah, blah, blah. But this is, as in the late 1970s, Americans today experience the failures of political and cultural elites in countless ways in the job markets and the grocery store checkout lines, on the streets in our schools, and media, blah, blah, blah. The failures that they're talking about is the spending on social programs. Okay. I'm just saying. Just a little.
To be perfectly honest with you, the Republican Party is in the process of very slowly and painfully destroying the education system in America.
We'll get there. Yeah, we'll get there in the protect our children part. Yep. But just a basic background on the Heritage Foundation and on Kevin Roberts, who's considered an academic. He is the current president of the Heritage Foundation, and that's who I was reading from. He also talked about the normalization of transgenderism in America, which is ruining our country. This is, first off, in schools, when I was in school learning to be a teacher, one of the core values was to teach kids to be tolerant and not to bully one another and just to respect each other's space and all that stuff. That's
all gone.
Yeah.
Another bald-headed buffoon.
This is the Heritage Foundation's budget blueprint for fiscal year 2023. I'm not going to go through it. All I want to say is, who the hell are they? They're not policymakers. They're academics, okay? They're making recommendations.
They're bullshit artists is what they are.
Yeah. Now, the Daily Signal is the Heritage Foundation's quote unquote journalism arm, so propaganda arm.
Yep.
This is where we're going with this. 8 ways Heritage Foundation, this was the 2022 blueprint, strengthens financial health, economic vitality, and national security. We're going to go back to this. I'm going to go back to that, by the way. Bringing dangerous debt under control by adding $4.7 trillion. And by the way, so you know, the small business loans for COVID under Trump, that was part of it. That was part of that budget with him. The border wall, that's part of it. All these little drips and drabs of billions and billions and billions of dollars add up. Tackling inflation. How do they tackle inflation? By giving tax cuts to the extremely wealthy.
Yep. Oh, that's their vision.
More tax reform, which means tax cuts.
For the wealthy.
Social Security and Medicare sustainable. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Deep cuts into Medicare and Social Security. These are the banes of their existence. And one of my sources, somebody mentioned, I think it was through NPR, that these hurt the GOP like holy water hurts Satan.
Let me just say this. Now they're saying Social Security go bankrupt in 2033. 10 years ago, they were saying it was going to go bankrupt in 2020. They say this all the fucking time. And everybody just looks at the date and says, oh my God, what are we going to do now? No one ever thinks to check on where they get that information. Perhaps you ought to. We could solve that. By the way, we could solve that problem about Social Security going broke very easily if we didn't let billionaires pay Social Security taxes only to $160,000 of what they earn. But we won't do that either. So
we'll get there. I have Bernie's plan in there. National defense, which, by the way, Trump went batshit and just went above and beyond. Now, I understand where you're going to say that. I agree. Sometimes the Democrats go overboard on defense spending as well because it helps their state when they have, when they have factories in there that build these things that they're talking about. I do get that, but Trump went completely overboard. Welfare reform. They basically want to cut welfare.
Yeah, they do.
Cut SNAP programs, all of that.
Yep. Get rid of examples include winding down the Department of Education. They want to return education to the states. So here's what we're going to have. Everything below the Mason-Dixon line, they maybe get to ABC, and then everything stops.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, folks, but this is actually dismantling this nation.
Now, also, once you get to third grade and you can't read at a basic level, it's very difficult to get to a certain level in reading, and it gets worse as you progress in age.
They want to return low-income housing to the states. I'm dying to see how that works in places like Florida, Georgia, Alabama. I'm dying to see how that works. I guarantee you. I mean, they're always pointing at the Democrats and the homeless in San Francisco and New York, giant, huge cities, whatever. I'm dying to see what their homeless numbers look like in those little states once they get a hold of the fucking low-income housing piece of the budget.
So cutting waste. The budget blueprint would cut foreign development aid, which means the Ukraine, into practice of paying federal employees to work for labor unions. Eliminate slush funds and pay for local pork projects. We can go into that. How many pork projects the Republicans have. Put a stop to ridiculously expensive subsidies for rum products produced on U.S. territories. I think they're probably talking about like Guam and Puerto Rico. Yeah, I'm not sure. And seize federal money to the abject failure that is the transit system. That is what we should be developing, to be completely honest with you. Yep. Our infrastructure.
Correct.
Take some of that money that we're spending on the military and invest it.
Yep. It's something that benefits the people.
Right.
Oh, did I say something? Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Yeah.
I put this in because that individual, in that preface talked about the devastating social programs in the 1970s, this is what they're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I know. We all know that most of the people on the right consider the downfall of the United States was when women got the vote. They've
Right.
stated that openly.
Women's liberation, ethnic pride, and gay liberation. The Gray Panthers, you know. This is just a basic talk about GOP's history of resistance to social welfare. They've never liked it. And this is where they talked about, you know, it being like holy waters of Satan.
So let me just say this right now. I just saw that first opening line, which is fine. I don't need to see it again. They tried to shut down the federal government. Essentially, Matt Gaetz succeeded in shutting down. I mean, the House is shut. It's closed. There's nothing that can be done because they don't have a goddamn speaker. Okay? So no matter how you look at it, these assholes shut down the government. And that's why the Senate's not even here. So please.
As I said, you know, here's a breakdown of how Trump increased spending by $4.7 trillion.
Oh, yeah, 4.7 trillion to the debt.
To the debt since 2017. And this continues. Just because he's out of office doesn't mean that some of his spending isn't still there. So, including the wall and, you know, so this was a huge part of it, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So, let's get into it just
Tax
a little
Cuts and
bit.
Jobs Act, but he left with 3,000 fewer jobs, 3 million fewer jobs than when he came in. Nice work.
So, this is a comparison for businesses and basically has a breakdown on some of the stuff that they're talking about. I really want Deb to be here for this.
Coming.
Because she's going to plots, as we say in the business.
I have kids. Sorry.
No, we understand. So here's the list of deductions through this legislation. New deduction for qualified business income of pass-through entities. Okay. No previous law for comparison. This is a new provision. The new provision, also known as Section 199A, allows a deduction of up to 20% of qualified business income for owners of some businesses. So that's one. Limits on deduction for meals and entertainment expenses. A business can deduct up to 50% of entertainment expenses directly related to the active conduct of a trade or business or incurred immediately before or after a substantial and bona fide business decision. We're talking about business parties and, you know, and travel expenses, and we're talking about meals, that kind of thing. What changed under the TCJA, which is the legislation. The TCJA generally eliminated the deduction for any expenses related to activities considered entertainment, amusement, or recreation. However, under the new law, taxpayers can continue to deduct 50% of the cost of business meals if the taxpayer or an employee or taxpayer is present and the food or beverages are not considered lavish or extravagant. I would like more detail on that. So, limits on deduction for business interest expenses. So that is deductions for business interest incurred by certain businesses, generally for businesses with $25 million or less in annual gross receipts. $25 million is a pretty good profit, I would say. Business interest expense is limited to business income plus 30% of the business's adjusted taxable income and floor plan financing interest. So, exchanges of property. This is one that struck me immediately. Payments made in sexual harassment or sexual abuse cases. No previous law or comparison. This is a new provision. Now, no deduction is allowed for that. However, who brought it up? And it's just they repealed the exception for local lobbying expenses, excess business loss, net operating loss, depreciation. Please listen to this. Temporarily allows 100% expensing for business property acquired and placed in service between September 27th, 2017, before January 1st, 2023. The 100% allowance generally decreases by 20% per year in taxable years beginning after 2022 expires in 2027, allowing expensing for film, television, live theatrical productions, and qualified production. I mean, there we go. Changes to fringe benefits and new credits. Employers can deduct a qualified bicycle commuting reimbursement as a business expense. Employers must now include 100% of these reimbursements in the employee's wages, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, actually. Moving expense reimbursements. Now, that depends on, to me, this depends on if these people can afford it. Are we talking about the billionaires that just move from one house to another and basically using it as travel? I don't know. FMLA, which isn't bad. So, changes to accounting structures. Not all of this is bad, but a lot of this is just feeding the extremely wealthy
and the corporate machine.
And the corporate machine. The TCJA allows small business taxpayers, and by the way, I'll get into that. I'm going to talk briefly about the COVID loans that Trump allowed, and the fact that these quote unquote small businesses weren't small businesses.
Right.
With annual gross receipts of $25 million or less to use cash method of accounting. Expands the number of small business taxpayers eligible to use cash method of accounting and exempt these small businesses from certain accounting rules for inventory, cost capitalization, and long-term contracts. Kind of, allows them to cut some corners. All right. Opportunity zones provide tax benefits to investors. Investors can elect to temporarily defer tax on capital gains that are reinvested in a qualified opportunity fund. So, this is the GOP trying to expand all of this. There is a copy of the bill. Now, one of the things there were three tax repeals that I just want to mention. Let me see if I can find it. What? I know it's in here. Oh, there we go. All right. So there are three of them. The excise tax on high cost health plans, which is the Cadillac tax, the fee on health insurance providers, the health insurance tax, and the medical device excise tax. That was in that chart. That was $550 billion. We're going to go into this in more detail next week about how the Republicans are all about the children. Those House Republican proposals, this is from April 25th, 23. The House budget proposals that are still pushing
Mother of God.
do the following things:
Nice.
gut funding for low-income students, reduce support for students with disabilities, slash mental health support for students, and increase college cost, while at the same time eliminating student debt relief.
You know, now do you see? I mean, I don't know. That kind of says it all.
Now, this is directly from the White House. Again, impacts of the Republicans' extreme CR 8% tax cuts. This is what they're going to do. This is what they're trying to do. 800 fewer customs and border protection agents and officers. And when they do that, they're going to turn around and tell you, the American people, that the Democrats are allowing all of this fentanyl through and blah, blah, blah. And,
Right.
while their budget is cutting the customs agents. And Biden's office saying 50,000 pounds of cocaine, more than 300 pounds of fentanyl, more than 700 pounds of heroin, more than 6,000 pounds of meth let into our country due to cuts to the customs and border protection. 110,000 children losing access to Head Start. 65,000 losing access to child care.
And then what do the parents do when they have to work?
Which affects the parents' jobs, because then they have to adjust their schedules and they may be at risk to lose their jobs. 60,000 seniors being robbed of nutrition services like Meals on Wheels. 2.1 million women, infants, and children being waitlisted for the special supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children. That's WIC. It's different from SNAP.
It is different. I had both when we were homeless. So.
Right. Up to 40,000 fewer teachers, aides, or other key staff across the country, affecting 26 million students in schools that teach low-income students and 7.5 million students with disabilities.
And by the way, you should be reading this as these are considered throwaway people for the GOP. Low-income people and people with disabilities. Sound familiar? It should.
Nearly 70 fewer ATF agents, who are often some of the first federal law enforcement on a scene of mass shootings to help law enforcement identify at-large shooters, and 13 furlough days for ATF's entire workforce. Now, Biden just helped fight for this. 4,000 fewer rail safety inspection days next year alone, with nearly 11,000 fewer miles of inspected track annually, enough track to cross the United States more than 3 times. We just went through this.
We did.
145 fewer members of local law enforcement due to cuts at the Department of Justice. And again, we're tough on crime. We're tough on crime. We're tough on crime. 300,000 households, including 20,000 veterans and 90,000 seniors, would lose housing choice vouchers, putting them at greater risk of homelessness.
That would be me.
$500 reduction to Pell Grants for $6.6 million students, 4,000 fewer FBI personnel, including agents who investigate crimes, 250,000 American workers who would be denied job training and employment services, resulting in 35,000 fewer workers gaining a registered apprenticeship. 50,000 workers would lose an average of $1,000 in back wages they're owed. This is wages they're owed, by the way. People applying for disability benefits would have to wait 2 months longer.
They're all about the people. Unbelievable.
Something I wanted to mention because, again, the Heritage Foundation is all about the fiscal responsibility of the Republicans, and they tout, Trump as a great president, blah blah blah.
Whatever.
This is just talking about the PPP loans. Okay.
Unbelievable. Never ends.
That's the article from the Washington Post. They actually mentioned it in the previous article. Now this just wanted to mention this. Trump uses Social Security as a just as a political football, honestly. He says one thing one moment and then another thing the next. Trump did. He pushed for raising the age of Social Security beneficiaries to, do you know the age, Deb?
70?
Yeah. The 70 years old.
Fucking ridiculous.
All right. Let me reset because it's doing its silliness. So there's a couple other things I want to mention in the second half or the third or fourth quarter of this. A couple other things is this talking point that the business class is first off, this idea of small business being $25 million or less. That to me isn't really small business, but okay. The other idea is that the business class or the business owners are the real job creators.
Yeah, right.
The job of business owners is not to create more jobs. It's to maximize profit. It's always been that way.
Right.
And if they have to automize, if they have to reduce labor force and labor hours, they will do it. They will do it in a heartbeat.
They will. They have done it. I have seen it. I have been in it.
The idea that the business owners are job creators is an absolute fallacy. It's you, the consumers, that create that need.
Right.
Okay, so let me get back to this. Let's see. This break in our program is brought to you by my computer. All right, hold on. Let's see if it's going to do it.
Come on. You can. I know you can.
Oh, good.
Go to the next one and then go back.
That's what I'm doing. There we go. I wanted to mention this, okay, and I'm going to mention this in the show about we care about the children. We're going to do that one next week. Understand that many of these grandparents that are getting Social Security are the primary caregivers of children.
Uh-huh.
7 million. And
Yep,
by the way, Deb's a parent,
I am.
okay?
I am.
Taking care
I
of a
actually have
child.
one disabled child. Yep, I do.
Right. That doesn't even include Deb. We're talking about 7.7 million grandparents. We're not talking about
No, hell
elder
no.
or
I don't want to
older
be a
people,
grandparent.
right? Older people taking care of their parents.
Right.
People in their 60s taking care of their parents. We're not talking about that either. So when you talk about, oh, what do you care about these people? They're old. They're out of the system. No, they're not. They're not. Hold on. My
We care about grandparents. This cheap bastard buried his ex-wife under a fucking golf course.
right.
Jesus Christ.
So Bernie Sanders, once again, he's pushing against tax cuts for billionaires, and he's introducing another bill. Does he think it's going to get passed on this Congress? No, but he's introducing it so that when
Because
we
it's there.
have, so it's there, and so when we have the political power to pass bills like this, it will already be there. It takes a
Um,
lot of time to write a bill.
it does. But let me say this. Uh, there's two other Democrats, one in the House and one in the Senate. And I do have the article on one of my browsers, but nobody knows this because again, it got very little play. I got it came, someone Amy Trommel sent it to me actually, and it came from one of the legislators' press release. It was a press release.
Okay.
Two Democrats have introduced a bill to expand Social Security and Medicare.
Right.
Nobody knows any of that. No one talks about that in the media. We're all too busy talking about the orange jackaloon. Okay.
Right. Right. Well, the thing is, this isn't the time to talk about it because that'll get the hackles of the House up,
Right.
and it's not going to go anywhere anyway.
Right. I'm just saying the media doesn't pay attention to it. The
No, they
media
don't.
doesn't pay any attention to anything. They really don't.
Now, here's what got me on this. I thought about it when I was doing this whole thing. Fortune magazine. This is from last year by John Benjamin.
And this is
Stop
Fortune
calling them,
magazine.
yeah, stop calling them job creators. Basically, he said exactly what I said. These owners, they're looking to maximize profits. They're not looking to increase your wages.
Right.
I have, and if they do, they are doing it to create an increase in production. So they're they're not generally looking out for the people's benefit or the workers' benefit, which is why we need unions. So American consumers being the real job creators because they create a market.
Right.
Okay.
The law of supply and demand.
Now, this, I disagree with this, that stimulus money or like tax break or like
Well,
those relief checks.
just let's just look at that for a minute.
Yeah,
The real reality is when you give tax breaks to billionaires, they don't spend that money.
right,
They bank that money.
right.
What they're talking about here with stimulus money is people like me. The government gives me $500. There are things I need for my life,
right?
for my kids. Okay,
but a lot of
I'm
those
going to
people
spend
are
my
going to
money.
pay. They're going to pay down debt though
That's
with
okay.
that,
I
which is
get that.
fine. But what these guys are talking about is that they're creating an economic stimulus by buying stuff. Not everybody's going to buy stuff because they can't. They
Not
have to
everybody.
pay down
Yeah,
their
I
debt.
agree. Not everybody's going to buy stuff because they can't. But you know, you got to think about a country full of I don't know how many millions of people get stimulus checks, but you know, I mean, even if all they bought during the whole thing was food, it's still spending money.
Right.
All right, there are
Right.
families who don't buy a lot of food because they can't.
I'm not saying don't do it.
No,
What I'm saying is it's kind of a false message, but it does help.
it does.
It does help, but it doesn't necessarily boost the economy in which, you know, people say it's gonna, or
Right.
like
Yeah, I don't
it's
think
not gonna
it's
help as much as, you know,
right.
because people, it's because people need it. That's why they're getting it.
Right.
Unless it's under a Republican, when that's just a PR thing.
Right.
But here's the final thing, because as I said, we're going to be talking about the GOP being the party of family values
Mm-hmm.
next week, and protecting the children. Now, this is from CAP,
I don't care.
but this is real data. 5 ways the Trump administration's policies harm children. Increasing food insecurity
Yep.
through the elimination of a lot of the funding for the SNAP programs, leaving millions without health insurance. 726,000 more children who are uninsured now, more than there were at the beginning of the Trump administration. And this figure does not account for the children who lost their health insurance because of COVID. Okay. These increases in uninsured rates for children can be directly attributed to cuts in outreach and enrollment assistance, efforts to undermine the ACA, Affordable Care Act, and anti-immigrant policies. By the way, we didn't really talk too much about that. When you talk about protecting the children, we are talking about from the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is talking about protecting white straight children.
Right.
That's what they're talking about. And
Yes.
white straight male children,
Especially.
especially. Yeah. So anti-immigration policies that led to lower enrollment in Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program are chipped, harming immigrant families because they are a target.
Yep.
Failing to open schools and childcare safely. Now, this is during the whole pandemic. So, slashing housing assistance. Before the pandemic, 1 in 5 families with children eligible for housing assistance received it. When the pandemic did reach the United States, even more families needed support in meeting their rent and mortgage obligations. We talked about that back in 2019 and 2020, actually 2020 and 2021. This was a constant attack. And by the way, also, attacks on Social Security and Medicare also had some effect because, as I said, some of these children, their primary caregiver is a grandparent.
Right.
and you're affecting that grandparent's money. So the bottom line is the Republicans are not, quote unquote, fiscally conservative. Most of the time, they blow a ton of money on defense spending and also on those tax cuts. Those are the two things because that's their base, you know. And I don't know if the military is even their voter base anymore because of what a jerkwad did, Tommy Tuberville did with abortion care for military families.
Right.
Okay. And what he's been doing to dismantle the military. But the bottom line is this idea that the Republicans are responsible spenders is ludicrous. And it's always been to a lot of these guys a philosophical difference. It's a tangible difference. When I don't have the opportunity to pay down my debt quicker, it affects me. I was able, through the federal student loan program, reduce my student loan debt. That's going to help me tremendously. I'm going to be able to pay it off within a year as opposed to never being able to pay it off and always being saddled by that debt. Okay. And there are
that is a future discussion too.
Yeah.
The whole cost of education, you know,
yep.
When you're looking, you know, again, and it's all, you know, the 20,000 pound elephant in the room is capitalism, no matter how you look at it. Okay. And, you know, it is the basis for all of this. Okay. Right. It's the basis for everything that's being done in this country. I was flabbergasted. One of the guys I work with, his daughter is interested in going to Arlington Catholic. When I went to Arlington Catholic, when I graduated from Arlington Catholic, tuition was $100, $16,000 a year.
Right.
Now.
Right.
So they have 650 some odd students. They take in, it's billions by the time it's amazing. And this is a Catholic school. Do we think they're giving all that money to charities? Do we think they're giving all that money back to the students the next year? I'm sorry, folks, but you know, it's all the excess of everything. It's impossible to function.
One more thing. I didn't mention it. I want to mention it next week. But one of the other things that I want to mention is this whole thing about work requirements for people under the SNAP program. Not everybody can work. That's an attack on disabled or retired people. So just be careful where you're going with this. Let's say you get injured at work and you're no longer able to work. Does that mean that you should be ineligible for food stamps? I don't know about that.
No.
I don't think so.
It's absurd. These things were put there to be used when people need this stuff. Okay. Right. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm actually in a position where I could probably apply for some things, but I'm doing okay. So I'm not going to do that because that takes it out of other people's mouths. Right. I don't need that right now. I may need that. I don't know. You know, obviously, I got to find elder housing. I can't afford to stay here for the rest of my life. It's not going to happen. Okay. Right. So I've got to find that. And I really do want to stop fucking working 34 hours a week. I'm in my 57th year of work now. I've earned a retirement. So I just, you know, again, it's just amazing. It's all of this is all due to the disparity between we the people the corporations and the billionaires. So here's my position. Democracy is all about the majority rule. Am I right? That's what democracy is. Majority rules. So we have a fascist party wagging the dog. Okay? They're not the majority. Their followers are not in the majority in this country. The millionaires aren't in the majority in this country, and the billionaires aren't in the majority of this country. And the majority in this country are the poor and the middle class. Most of the programs should be coming to us. Okay? To the people who actually need it the most, not to billionaires who are sending spaceships up to fucking Mars. Okay? I'm sorry, but democracy, majority rules, the GOP has to go, and this shit needs to get under control. And, that starts with the people. It starts with the people voting.
And I know there's a reality that of everyone who uses FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, there are some people who abuse it. People who use the SNAP program, there are some people who abuse it. You want to cut some of that out? I agree with that. I'm all for it. However, you compare that to all of the people who have abused the system, all of the billionaires or richer people who abuse the small business loans or tax breaks or whatever. You see those people blatantly abusing it. You compare that with the small percentage of people abusing the system with FMLA or whatever, I think you'll find a big disparity.
I'm just going to say this. I was homeless and we were put in a scattered site in Lynn.
Right.
I happen to know that the guy in the next building was on food stamps and welfare. And he had a Mercedes-Benz.
Right.
And he had a constant influx of people in his apartment. He was a guy who actually made $70,000 a year, who somehow managed to get himself in the system, get an apartment for free, and was drug dealing out of an apartment and then going home to a home in Wellesley at the end of the day. The people who are cheating the system are not necessarily the poor people, okay?
Right.
Get it through your heads. Because I have been in the situation where I've had to sit in front of people who give me money and people who give me homes, and they don't give you any, they give you a ton of shit before they give you anything, okay? You are raked over the coals. So that's bullshit. Bullshit.
Right.
I'm calling bullshit.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
There's a small percentage, but stop saying that.
Tighten up how you get people on the system. Don't cut the money. The solution isn't cutting the money so the poor suffer. The system is getting your shit together and screen people better. Okay?
Exactly.
That's what it is.
If you have somebody that doesn't need it, by the way, if you have a guy making millions of dollars, does he really need a break, or for his steak dinner to be written off as a tax expense? No.
Did Tom Brady need a PPP loan?
For his yacht to friggin' drive down Boston?
Tom Brady didn't need a $1 million PPP loan when he and his wife had $900 million in total wealth, so he could run a supplement business online. And then Donald Trump forgave it. So he never had to pay a dime of it back. But all of a sudden, he was driving up Florida with a nice new big ass yacht. It's all right in front of you, folks. It's all right in front of you.
And as a union representative, I know the amount of paperwork you have to fill out for any of these programs.
Oh, yes. I can tell you that.
The amount of money, the amount of paperwork I had to fill out for the pass along or the break I got, I worked for that. simply making absolutely sure that they got it, that it was filled out correctly. I did everything, and not everybody does that. And
so
sometimes they don't get it, but
let me tell you something else that happens when you're on welfare and on food stamps. In order for you to continue to get your money, every week you have to fill out paperwork that shows you made at least 10 phone calls to get a job.
right.
You have to provide the name of the person that you could talk to and a phone number, because they will check you. So none of this is just come on in, we'll give you a card, and we'll just keep putting money on it. You won't have to do shit. You can just live the high life. That's a bunch of shit.
By the way, the same thing goes. The same thing. Anybody goes through unemployment.
Yep.
You have to go through the same thing.
Yep.
So I don't want to hear it.
Yep. So stop. All right, already. Maybe a few of you should become homeless so you understand what it's all about. Just saying.
And we're
like that guy. Who was that guy that decided to try being homeless for 2 days? Remember, he was a
that girl. Guy?
Yeah.
Well, the girl who decided that homelessness is a choice.
It's a choice. She
and we're sucking off the teat.
Yeah.
The poor people or the working class are sucking off the teat of the Democratic, so whatever the hell they said.
Did she decide to be homeless for what, 2 days? Was it 2 days?
No, for like an hour.
An hour. Okay, can you stop it already, people? I just can't even. I thought 2 days was ridiculous, but please get out of here.
I thought it was less than a day. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. Jesus H Christ on a cracker. Honestly, already, please, mother.
That was like some TikToker.
Yeah, it was another fucking boneheaded. She was probably monetized too. I think she was.
Yeah. She had to remember. We did a short show on her too.
We did.
She has a whole like line of crap and self-help and all that. Remember that whole thing?
Self-help books. That's what it is. She tried to be homeless for a little while, and she's decided that it's a choice. So I'm going to tell you how not to make that choice, and I'm going to charge you for it. That's really what it was.
Exactly.
Jesus. I can't even anymore. I get such a headache. Anyway, but that's who he is.
We are going to do a substantive dive into the 2025 thing. I just took a small talking point, this idea of fiscal conservatism, but that's a key point in the Heritage Foundation's rhetoric, as well as everybody else. This whole thing about our woke policies and our woke spending and all that. Basically, they're saying don't spend it on the gays.
Yeah,
don't spend it on the blacks.
You know what woke means? You know what woke is an alternative term for? Empathy. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Now, I pushed back. There's a group, or there's I don't want to call a news organization that has a bunch of mockumentaries, I almost want to call them, that they are throwing this information out that, again, transgenderism is a trend. And, it's becoming glamorized in the entertainment industry. We're going to take the piss out of that, too. Deb already knows this is not a choice. I don't see her child making that choice to be who they are. They're being who they are. Okay?
Yep.
So Gwen is Gwen.
Let me just say this. My child was suicidal.
Right.
And is now happy. So until you really understand what it's all about, and I'm sure you don't, it's not like some 17-year-old kid like my child was when they came to me, woke up and decided, I'm going to be a girl today.
Right.
I think I'm just going to do that. I'm going to change my name to Gwen. I'm going to be a girl. Okay?
From now on, I want you to call me Loretta Stan. Yeah.
Yeah, here's what it is. People who are gay, like me, people who are transgender, like my daughter, their brains are wired differently. That's how this works. It all starts with the brain. There's already been studies, and now they're doing more. So maybe you want to think a little bit more. I know science. Oh, bad thing. Ooh. Since COVID, we don't want to do science anymore. No, we want to listen to RFK Jr. Yeah, okay. I just can't. Try reading. It's a good thing.
Now, are there kids out there who may think, "Ooh, that sounds kind of cool. Maybe I'll look into it." Are there kids there? That's what the screening processes are there for. Okay, I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but give me a break.
Kids all their lives look at stuff like that. They don't tell you about it. They don't tell their parents about it. I did. I looked at a lot of stuff when I was young, but I didn't say I was gay because it was a cool thing to do, because none of this is cool. Okay. Being chased by people with baseball bats as you come out of gay bars in Boston. That's right. Not cool. Being discriminated in your job. That's not cool. That's not fun. And that's not a good time. Nobody makes this choice because nobody wants to put up with the bullshit from the Republican Party as an idea that we're having fun. Okay. We're not.
You know what's cool? Being accepted for who you are.
Exactly.
Okay. Exactly. Now, I don't know, Deb, I don't know if you watch this show, but, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it's pretty good.
I don't watch any TV.
I know. But the point being, the last season, they got heavy-handed in their writing, but that's fine because you have a couple of gay cops, one who is a police chief and another one who's just a cop who was keeping the secret that she was bi, and they talk about it, and they talk about it a little bit more. The people watching the show, some of them got up in arms. Oh my God, it's becoming too woke. It's supposed to be a comedy show or whatever. They always had that message in there, though. So, get over yourselves.
Right. What they want to do is they want to put us back in a fucking closet and never want to see us again. You know what? Fuck you. That's what I want to do with you, too. How's that? Okay. But I'm not gonna. So.
Right. I mean, the fact that Deb tolerates me, a straight white boy from Virginia.
You're not the average straight white boy.
I know. You've said that before. I
have a lot of male friends, actually. They're not the normal straight white boys. My friend Brian, he's not a normal straight white boy. I have a lot of male friends. I just don't want anything to do with them under the covers. That's all it really is.
Right. But the bottom, well, that's the other thing, that not every dude is the same, but a lot of them, they have this weird, superiority complex.
I have a perfectly charming family full of men. I'm okay. I'm good.
Right. Some of these guys with superiority complex, they move boxes for a living for the Postal Service. Yeah, like, wow. Where do you think you really think you're better than everybody else? Yeah. Well,
some of them cut keys at Ace too.
Right, exactly.
Job, right? You just put it on the fucking thing and go boom. I'm a genius. Anyway.
Oh, this way longer than we figured, but whatever.
Okay. But we'll kill it now. We'll end this now. We'll see you next week. We'll be talking again, and we're getting more serious as we go further into this.
More Heritage Foundation stuff. By
the time it comes, I might be crying. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, but a lot of it's going to be policy that's been driven forever.
Right.
So,
all right, gang.
See y'all.
Talk to you next week.